A lot of blockchains, just in general, they don't really have revenue models. A lot of times it's really just about you got emissions and all of a sudden the token is the product. But at Supra, we're looking at different revenue model systems to make Supra and our foundation more sustainable in the long run. For example, when you have a layer one with native oracles, native automation, you can do some interesting things at the layer one level.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lum, your Web3 host. For those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics, especially in Web3, may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most people. Here today, I'm joined by Jon Jones. He's the co-founder and CBO of Supra. Jon, could you give a quick introduction by yourself?
Hi, everyone. Jon Jones, co-founder of Supra. Really great to be here today. I'd like to give a different type of intro that I normally give and kind of go into my background, where I'm from, and some of the interesting stories of how I got here today. But yeah, so I'm from upstate New York, and I moved from New York when I was 17. My parents decided to move to Cameroon, Africa, of all places, and as missionaries. And not really like a church mission, but they went to do mission type work. And I decided, they gave me a choice, so I could continue and finish high school in the U.S., or I could go with them on this journey to Cameroon, Africa. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to Africa. And so I did that. So I was in Cameroon for 2 years. This is when I was 17, 18, and up to 19 years old. Lived in Cameroon. While I was there, I did multiple things. Everything besides finishing high school. I learned French. I lived in a place called Yaoundé, which is the capital of Cameroon, for about a year. In Yaoundé, I ended up working for the American school there, teaching and coaching basketball to middle school girls, and then on to the high school girls. 17-year-old kid, and then all of a sudden I was a basketball coach for middle school, then high school girls. That was fun. A year later, I moved to a coastal city in Cameroon called Limbe. Now, Limbe is an English-speaking zone of Cameroon, and it was on the ocean. And I worked for this primate rehabilitation center. So this is a place that has apes and chimps and monkeys that they rehabilitated these kind of animals and kind of gave them a sanctuary to live. So I volunteered there for about 6 months, and I lived in Limbe. And that was, of course, I had so many. I could speak for hours about my experiences that I had as this late teenager in Cameroon, but I'll save that for a different day. I moved back to the U.S., and of all things, instead of going right back into university, I decided to travel the U.S. And so I went to 46 out of the 50 states, doing door-to-door sales. So I was like a door-to-door salesperson who, a lot of people don't like salespeople and door-to-door people, but I was actually pretty friendly. And that's really where I kind of learned how to.
What type of products were you selling at that time?
These were cheap. These were just like, these were just kind of like products made in China. Wasn't that interesting of a product, but it was like an experience for me learning how to get out of myself. I'm an introvert. But that was an experience for me to really get out of my being an introvert and learning how to communicate and get people's attention. And also, that was a really interesting time in my life where I learned how to experience rejection. So you can imagine, you go to someone's door, you talk to someone in a parking lot or at some business, and you're going to get so many rejections. And how do you get rejections and keep a positive mind? Right? How do you keep this positive spirit? Because if you get rejections and it actually physically and emotionally makes you feel bad, right? People can see it. They can see it on you. And you're just going to get rejected after rejected if people see that you're like, there's something wrong about you. Like, why are you sad coming up to me trying to sell me something? So I had to learn how to deal with rejection and always keep this positive mentality and mindset. And that actually helped me. And I learned how to just like brush off rejection, go to the next person. It was a numbers game. And I learned about selling. And really, more importantly, I learned how to just keep a positive mentality and mindset and know that I can keep going and I can be successful. I'll get a sale, whether it's one out of 100 people or not. I just have to, it's a numbers game. So that was a really cool experience for me. Then going from that, I decided I really loved California. 15 years ago, California was a really great place, and it's changed quite a bit since then. But fell in love with California, specifically Berkeley, and I decided, I set my goal. Okay, I'm going to go to community college, and I'm going to get into Berkeley. And so during community college, I spent 6 months in Taiwan to study Chinese, and I applied. I got into Berkeley mainly because I wrote about, in my essays, I wrote two essays. One was an essay about an experience I had in Africa, and
Mm.
the other was my experience in Taiwan. And I connected that in Berkeley. Anyway, I got into Berkeley, I think, because of those life experiences. So that was great. Graduated Berkeley, and I moved back to Taiwan. My girlfriend, my wife from way back then, is Taiwanese, and I decided to come back to Taiwan and to live here. And I've been here for now almost 15 years. When I moved here when I graduated from Berkeley in 2011, came to Taiwan, I quickly realized that Taipei didn't have the same entrepreneurial spirit as the Bay Area, as New York, even as like Singapore and Hong Kong have this more, they have a stronger business culture and entrepreneurial spirit. Taipei, when I arrived in 2011, really didn't have that. And I decided, well, if I'm going to live here, I need to create the environment. I need to make sure that if the environment's not here, I have to create it. So I created something called Taiwan Entrepreneur Club
Mm.
in 2014, and we did weekly networking events, and I just brought people that were entrepreneurs that were just interested in doing something different, people that wanted to create startups. And through that, I actually got introduced to Ethereum in 2016, actually even earlier, but in 2016 was really when I got a strong introduction to Ethereum, smart contracts. People that came to the event said, "Hey, John, you really have to look at smart contracts and blockchain." So I knew about Bitcoin back in 2011 when I was at Berkeley, but never really, I wish I read the white paper back then, but never really looked into Bitcoin at that time because I felt like it was just maybe it's like Ponzi economics. I didn't understand the philosophy of decentralization, distributed systems back then. But learning about Ethereum, I said, oh, these smart contracts can automate, like you can create something that automates payments or something like this. And I was definitely attracted to Ethereum at that time. And then I decided, you know what? In 2017, I decided I'm going to pivot Taiwan Entrepreneur Club to
Yeah.
focus on Web3. And I'm just going to do it. Like we have this Taiwan Entrepreneur Club and everyone's in it. And I'm just going to do events now that focus on Web3. So that's what we did in 2017 was for those of you have been around for a while, was the ICO boom when
Yeah.
all these projects started to raise money. Like Ethereum became like the main use case of Ethereum became into this like token generation fundraising vehicle,
Yeah.
right?
That was
And
like
so
the ICO boom, right? Yeah.
that was the ICO boom, yeah. And then, but that boom came with a bust. And January of 2018, I met my co-founder of Supra, Josh, in San Francisco. And Josh immediately impressed me as a great software architect. And he was really passionate about this idea that he came up with, this consensus algorithm and this design that he created that would outperform Ethereum. And so I was really impressed with him. I wanted to work with him. I'm less technical. I'm a little bit more technical these days, but I'm a less technical co-founder. So I was attracted to work with Josh. I came back to Taipei. We had multiple calls, and Josh actually moved to Taiwan, where we started our crypto lab that year, June of 2018. And this was like the bottom of the ICO bust, right? This was when like no one believed in the future of tokens. VCs were like, how do we invest in companies? How do we evaluate? Like, do we invest in equity, tokens? 2018 was a very difficult year,
Mm.
impossible year to raise money. So we started our venture studio without any funds but our own. And we kept on going. We did research and development. We kept on doing research and development for the original consensus algorithm, which is now called Moonshot. and it's on our network on mainnet. We kept up that research at that time, but we also did a lot of other things in our studio. Like, for example, we did this one project that connected IoT data and ran consensus on IoT data and timestamped it on Ethereum. And we worked with a publicly traded company in Taiwan called Advantech. And Walmart China heard about this. We got invited to this food safety supply chain competition in Shenzhen. We went to Shenzhen. We became a finalist. And that was a good part of our journey, and really connects actually to how we went from creating a venture studio that focused on consensus algorithm, basically trying to build an L1, to also understanding oracles and how to run consensus on off-chain data on chain. So that was like our intro to understanding oracles. And so now we had this experience with layer one consensus algorithm as well as oracles. And that was a really important part of our journey, because Supra today, we have built this infrastructure that vertically integrates both an L1 with native zero block delay Oracle data, like pricing data, zero block delay automation in one infrastructure, under one shared security infrastructure with shared validators and nodes. And so that's kind of our journey. We raised some money from some great VCs in the space, like Coinbase Ventures and Amoka and Hashed in Korea. Some great US based VCs as well as Asia. And we really stuck it through, and we launched our mainnet for our L1 with native oracles November of last year. And so it's been, about 4 months since we launched mainnet, and a lot has happened since then, and a lot is in the pipeline going forward. So that's a little bit about the story. I definitely put in a little bit of color into my backstory because I felt like that could be something new for our ecosystem, but also your audience.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Well, of course, we're going to deep dive into your company later, but actually, I still want to dig a bit more into your background. Thanks for the very extended introduction. So then you moved to Taiwan, I think. Is it Taipei, right? In 2011? Yeah. What did you do first? Like, what did you first do in Taiwan? Were you
My gosh.
already in
Okay.
Web3 or?
So I came here and I realized I couldn't stay in Taiwan without a visa.
Hmm.
I could jump and back and forth from, like, I could go to Hong Kong and come back to Taipei, but I could only do that
Visa run.
like I could do visa runs every 3
Yeah.
months. So I actually, as a Berkeley grad, I had to teach English here in
Okay.
Taipei for at least the first year to get a visa to stay
You have to
here.
begin somewhere. Yeah,
I
obviously.
know. And
Yeah.
as a grad, I don't think I had the ability to get a visa doing any other work besides
Hmm.
teaching English. And really,
Interesting.
Taiwan has improved much
Yeah,
since then. Now they have golden visas, they have things.
I
But
see.
this is what I said, 2011, there wasn't the same entrepreneurial like infrastructure, but also community that existed here in Taiwan and in Taipei. So I had to start out just to stay here and have a visa and to stay with my wife here. I had to actually teach English. And that was not my original plan. And that wasn't what I wanted to do in the future, but it's
Hmm.
something that I started with. And then, that's, I created Taiwan Entrepreneur Club and, evolved from there. But
I see.
the reasoning for the original reasoning to create Taiwan Entrepreneur Club and eventually, focus on Web3 events, I didn't want to just do events and just create community. I wanted to use that as a springboard for the next thing. And I didn't know what
Hmm.
that was. I didn't know I would meet Josh, my co-founder, and then eventually start Supra. But my original thinking was maybe this is a springboard for me to create a blockchain, like a blockchain accelerator.
Hmm.
We eventually did create a venture studio, which is like an accelerator. But I was inspired by Consensus in New York, right? This kind of blockchain accelerator that helps Web3 startups get traction and go to market. But yeah, that's a little bit of the background, my early days here in Taipei.
Interesting. So you're teaching English for a couple of years, and then you switch into building like community, right? Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, for entrepreneur. Yeah, and I think we all know that in Web3 now, community is pretty key, right? So like, yeah, and like for sure, it's so you're building like your own community at that time, and then afterward, somehow sprung up, and then you transition from just entrepreneur, which is a very wide area, to like just Web3 focus, right? Like a
That's right.
narrow. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Cool. And then, did you guys already was what you was building? Well, actually, no. I'm gonna focus on your company a bit later on. But actually, what do you think that your was your international upbringing influence that in any way to leading you to that? Or
Well, it's interesting. Like, if you think of blockchain, and I only thought of this later. When I first got intro to blockchain, I was thinking, oh, this is just technical. This is for software engineers, and this is for heavy duty researchers, and it's not necessarily for someone of my background, right? That was my original thought. Now I know when you look at blockchain, you see a mixture of different backgrounds that you need to know. For example, I studied political economy.
that was your major at
That was
Berkeley?
my major at Berkeley, political
Okay.
economy and Chinese. And if you think about blockchain systems, there's economic, like of course, there's economic structures, and there's also political structures. You have DAOs, you have political systems. In distributed systems, you have some sense of politics. So it's interesting that political economy is an interesting combination when you mix in, of course, politics, economics, and understanding software, distributed systems, cryptography, kind of mixes quite well. In hindsight, I'm thinking, wow, political economy, not a bad subject to have studied, to kind of, as an intro, or as a something that I could leverage in the future. Now we're seeing how politics or regulation is a big part of crypto.
Yeah.
And we're seeing how the US has totally done a 180 in its
Mm.
support for Web3 entrepreneurs. For a while, being in Taiwan and, you know, diving into the Web3 industry, I felt like I'm probably going to be an expat my whole life now. There's probably no reason for me to take the risk and move back to the US as a Web3 entrepreneur. But that has totally changed now. And so it's interesting to see politics kind of moving in more support of the Web3 industry. And it's also really interesting to see now it's like the total opposite, where now the US is almost the one leading the Web3 meta at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It is just curious, but is a political economy more politics and economics, or more, or like a little bit half and half of both?
It, I would say that from my track of learning, it was a little
Mm,
bit more politics.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, and I think we both know that like to build any Web3 community, and especially if anything have to do with the tokenomics, right? Then economics is like a good foundation, right? Like a good foundation, because
That's
like
right.
a lot that's actually taught in economics is actually would reflect into what is in at Web3. So I think unless like people study economics or finance, then people would be quite hard to realize some of that similarity reflection.
Yeah. So token economics, and
Hmm.
also incentive systems,
Yeah,
incentive structures to incentivize people, to take an action, incentivize people to actually participate. Yeah. So, yeah, the
cool, cool.
yeah, token economics and incentives are a big part of blockchain Web3. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. All right, just one fun question before we deep dive into Supra. What can you share with us? What do you do for fun in your free time? What's your hobbies?
Sure. I have, well, they say you can only focus on a few things in
Yeah.
life, like, and do them well.
Hmm.
I'm a father of three kids. I have three boys. And so I have to work, and I want to work, and I want to make sure that we do work well. And I have family. So a lot of what I do is focusing on work and family. I don't really have, I wish I could, like, I have a lot of, like, I was actually quite good at sports growing up. I played soccer, and I actually got to the university level before I got injured in soccer. I played, in community college. I would have loved to went on and played at Berkeley.
Yeah.
I played basketball growing up, and so I was really into sports. But then I got injured. Actually, I don't know. So I used to do breakdancing,
Oh, okay.
and which is a random
Nice.
fact. No one in our community knows that. But
Yeah.
I actually hurt my knee breakdancing, and so that kind of
Oh,
prevented me from
ouch.
kind of focusing on sports in the future. But the thing is that I think that was a blessing for me, because I a lot of my identity at that time was focused on how great I am at physical activities. And so now that that is away, I had to kind of strip my identity and find my new what am I going to focus on now, right? And I couldn't focus on how well I was doing at sports, and I had to kind of switch gears. And that was when I was 21. And so that, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I got injured. But I used to love snowboarding, and
Mm,
I still snowboard. So during ETH Denver, I didn't go this year because I didn't have the time. But every time I go to ETH Denver, I like to go snowboarding. And I would say that. So I did say that I have family. I have 3 kids. I have to
yeah,
focus on family and work, and there's not much else you can focus on, like family, work, and health. And if you can combine some of those activities, I think it works. But I know this sounds a little bit boring, but for now, like those are my hobbies. I think what I would like to do in the future, I'd like to eventually buy a nice boat, and I'd like to go kind of like uh, spend time with my kids on boat and go fishing and stuff, things like that. So I think a lot of my future hobbies will try to bring and do it together with family, like on the weekends.
I see. Makes sense. Yeah. So that way you can enjoy time with family, right?
How
Quality
about
time.
you? What are some of your hobbies?
Oh yeah, well, I have too many, but well, lately just been recording a lot of podcasts here. But I do calisthenics. I also travel a lot. I've been to over like 40 plus countries now already. Um, yeah, definitely gonna travel more in my lifetime for sure. I do calisthenics because I feel like it's pretty fun. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's like a combination of like somewhere in between the bodybuilding and gymnastic, but it's more fun because you have like these movement, right? For example,
I
like handstand, front lever. You can progress in progressions. So it's make you feel like it's kind of remind me of the early days when I was a kid playing video games. You have level you have to beat. So now the same thing, because to master one exercise, usually you could need anywhere from I would say 3 to 9 months, depending on the exercise, and you have like 5 to 6 different progressions that you have to go through. You cannot do a shortcut. You cannot go from zero to hero. So that's what I like about it. You really have to
I
be consistent.
So back in the day, I think I was 7 years old, and my mom signed me up for a gymnastics class. And I took the class maybe a couple times. I didn't do it that many times. But in the first couple classes, I learned how to do a cartwheel.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
I just kept I kept that going. Like now I can do a cartwheel. And now,
Yeah.
and I was like, what's the next step after a cartwheel? And doing like a cartwheel and then like trying to do a backflip.
Yeah.
I
Backflip. Yeah.
eventually got really good at that.
Nice.
Yeah, gymnastics, like for fun for me was exciting. That's also what led me into breakdancing, because that kind of like those kind of fun body movements were thrilling, and also people liked it. It's a good thing to show off, and it's also
Yeah.
how well you can train your body to kind of do those movements. And I remember when I played soccer, I don't think
Mm.
this didn't work at university level, but back in high school, I used to do this flip throw in where you actually have to like do a front flip and then throw the ball. And that would always impress people that were watch the game. And that definitely made me feel like, super invigorated. So yeah, I have somewhat of a background in gymnastics and breakdancing and those type of movements. So that's cool that's kind of one of your hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
It's
beyond that, right? Calisthenics, you said.
yeah. Calisthenics. Correct. Yeah. It. I think it probably didn't even. It wasn't even a term like until probably I don't know how many years ago, but I'm pretty sure that 20 years ago there wasn't this thing called calisthenics, or maybe it's more like yeah, maybe in the last 10 or 15 years, something like that. Anyway, it's yeah, it's pretty fun. Like I said, just unlock achievements and just remind me of video game. I don't have time for video games anymore, obviously, but then
How many pull-ups can you do? I bet.
if I try, yeah, in like one setting, I think anywhere between 15 to 20. Yeah,
Nice.
if I want to go for max, yeah, with like good form, strict, proper thing. Yeah.
Right now, so I think my max was 14.
Mm,
I'm improving that now. I mean, I'm actually at 10 at the moment, but I am 40 years old. But my best in my life was like 14. And right now I'm at 10, and yeah, I'm looking to get 20, because I looked up what is the top 1% for 40-year-olds, and it's 20 pull-ups. So
interesting.
that's definitely one of my goals going forward. My 6-year-old can do 3, and
Nice.
according to ChatGPT, that's already like 1%. So I'm pretty
Okay,
impressed with that. It's like he should be able to do 0, and he can do 3, so he's strong. And my 10-year-old, he can do 4, and so he's gonna work on getting up to 10. To be the
nice.
top 1% of his age.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that ChatGPT is now like the new Wikipedia.
But yeah,
Refer to that for knowledge, right? Yeah. Interesting. I bet ChatGPT has read all of Wikipedia already. Yeah.
I
That's
I have one friend right now, well, actually, my wife is my best friend, but my second best friend is AI because I
mm,
speak to AI all the time to help me with work, but also just I have so much curiosity about random things that
yeah.
boom, I just talk to AI. I know that sounds pretty corny, but this is the introvert life.
It's like your personal assistant, right? Yeah, you can
Yeah,
because that kind of knows that I've consumed probably like I don't know 10,000 encyclopedias that can just like tell you whichever it is that you want to know. It's pretty cool. I think that's a good use of ChatGPT. Yeah, in my opinion. Anyway, cool. So without further ado, let's go ahead and deep dive into company you're building. I think feel free to share a bit more about the company background and then share a presentation or website about your company, about Supra, if you get.
sure. Okay, so like I mentioned before, Supra is a layer 1 blockchain. So you can imagine Supra like Solana or Aptos or Sui, high throughput layer 1. But that's not it. So Supra can be described in a simple way as like a Solana, a layer 1, Chainlink, an oracle, and layer 0, a bridge. So those three things combined is the infrastructure of Supra, all combined into one. So you can think of Solana, Chainlink, and Layer 0 together as one. And the benefit to that is the fact that you can have native oracles and native bridging on the L1 itself. So what that does is that allows new use cases and new applications to be built on Supra. So if you think about like a DEX, right? If you trade crypto or hopefully you didn't trade meme coins because 99.5% of them are down.
Yeah.
But if you've ever used a DEX, a lot of them, or a perpetual protocol, you need the layer 1 for transactions, right? You need an oracle to understand the price of data, like the price of the assets, right, at any given time. And then oftentimes you need automation, which is like, if this happens, then do this. And these are usually separate protocols. So you usually have the layer 1 and you have the like price feed oracle, and then you have the automation oracle. And because you have these different systems, there's different latency involved. And that latency causes problems. So at Supra, what we decided to do is integrate the oracles under one unified infrastructure with the same validator set that are running consensus on transactions, that those validators are also doing Oracle related tasks. And that's really the key insight here, because we can be able to do and create applications on Supra on one stack with less latency. And so that enables many different use cases. So you can imagine Supra as a layer 1, high throughput layer 1, with native oracles and native bridging.
Cool. Yeah. So it's like 3 in 1, right? So then just curious, is your code open source? Like all these components or certain?
So many of the components, for example, for the wallet, are open source. For Supra right now, for the mainnet, we haven't open sourced everything just yet, but it will be over time. We're taking a page out of Tesla's model, where we're going to be open sourcing things gradually. But we want to definitely have a first mover advantage to be able to use our technology first before other companies and other protocols use our technology that we spent time creating. We want to make sure that our ecosystem and people that have been following us and rooting for our success make sure that Supra implements the technology first. In the future, yes, we will be open sourcing everything, because you kind of have to in blockchain. You have to keep things open,
Yeah.
transparent. and it's also for almost it's like a public good. And actually, I'd like to. There's an interesting background story here relating to my past and my family.
Okay.
My grandfather is a famous boat architect, right? So Josh, my co-founder, is a software architect, amazing software architect. My grandfather was an amazing boat and naval architect, and he designed very famous boats called the Boston Whaler, or something called the Deep V. This is a design on modern power boats. So if anyone's listening and knows about boating, they would actually know the boats that I'm referring to and also the designs. It's interesting because my grandfather never he actually missed the date of his patent for being able to patent the Deep V design on these modern power boats that use a lot of modern power boats use the same design today. And he missed the patent date, which made the Deep V an open source IP that everyone in the world could use. And this actually brought him a lot of depression because he couldn't monetize on his invention. And he became quite depressed over this. And I guess he wouldn't know the fact that by doing that, though, by making that open source, he made much greater impact in the world than he would have if he just tried to monetize it and make a little bit of money off of his design. So it's interesting, like, even though he felt in the time a lot of like pain and sorrow for actually open sourcing something and not taking advantage of it, he actually made a huge impact in the world up until today, you know? And so that's an interesting story. And so if we apply that to Supra or software systems, open sourcing can actually benefit the world better, and it can speed up innovation as a whole and as an aggregate. So when Elon Musk open source like the battery, you know, the batteries
Yeah.
for Tesla, that was a big service to the advancement of electric vehicles worldwide. And that's sped up the advancement of electric vehicles at least by a couple years. And you can imagine just by a couple years, that's a huge impact. And so, yeah, open source, it's an important thing to do. And we're definitely going towards that way for Supra, because we're all about, in the end, it's really all about what impact can you have in your life. And the goal, yeah, is for Supra to make a huge impact in the world.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. Just curious. So Supra is like, is it multi VM or is it EVM compatible? Is it like compatible with multiple different VM?
Yeah, so actually we went to market with Move. Move
Mm.
is a MoveLang is a programming language, and MoveVM is short for Move Virtual Machine. And other comparable blockchains that use Move are that went to market were Aptos and Sui. And Supra was the third Move-based L1 to go to market. So Aptos, Sui, and now Supra. Now we decided to go to market and go to mainnet first with Move because Move is a very secure language, and we want that as the foundational language and virtual machine for our network, right? For long-term governance of the network. But you're right, we actually are implementing multi virtual machines onto one network. So we're live right now on mainnet with Move. And what's coming up in the next couple of weeks is we're going to have testnet on with EVM live on Supra as well. So EVM, like Ethereum based applications, can relaunch onto Supra. And also the ERC20 token standard of tokens can also kind of like interrupt with our network. And so that's going to bring a lot more developers, you know, to want to like bring their applications onto Supra, or existing developers that understand, you know, building and Solidity or in the EVM world to more easily build onto Supra. And not only that, you can imagine there's a lot of liquidity and trading that is in the EVM world that Supra can tap into that liquidity. So launching with Move, EVM testnet in the next couple of weeks. And then Q3, Solana. We're going to have Solana VM supported on Supra as well, and then Cosm Wasm. So the goal here is to not pigeonhole one virtual machine or programming language, but have a better developer experience for developers of all different ecosystems to build on Supra, but also that we can more efficiently tap into liquidity and vice versa to different networks.
Makes sense. Yeah, cool. And then with your native bridge, I guess that will make it easier for bridging in and out, right?
That's right. So we have a native bridge that's also going to be on testnet in a couple weeks, and that is called Supra Nova. And Supra Nova is, so we call it a bridge, but actually it's bridgeless. It's not a traditional bridge, although it does the bridging functions of a bridge. But we call it bridgeless because what we're doing with Supernova is we are running consensus, because like proof of stake systems, layer ones, you can know the validator set of these proof of stake systems. So what we can do is, as we know the validator sets of these systems, we can recompute the consensus of these nodes, and we created a more efficient way of bridging assets from layer one to layer one. So that's going to be launching. That's going to be a really big, I think that'll really cause a big splash in the blockchain Web3 ecosystem. And hopefully it can really bring more attention to Supra. And I think it will bring attention to the Supra ecosystem, and Supra can more efficiently operate as this hub and spoke to facilitate cross-chain communication and transactions.
I see. And you said that the mainnet already launched for like live for 4 months already, right? By now. And then can you share maybe some interesting dApps or apps application that are building on Supra, and maybe especially dApps that can only be built on Supra?
Yeah, so it's interesting because automation, so having native automation isn't live yet, and that will be live on testnet in 2 weeks. So having native automation, we're already having applications trying to test it out, trying new features, but this is so new and doesn't exist in other ecosystems natively that a lot of the applications are really kind of testing it out, and we're excited about some of the things that we're seeing. But yeah, and in terms of our ecosystem, we have projects like Superlane, which is a borrowing and lending platform. You know, you're going to see a borrowing and lending platforms on most Web3 blockchain ecosystems where, you know, hopefully Superlane can utilize our native oracles, native automation to do something more. So we're excited to see about what they're going to come up with. There's a team called GrowFitter, and they're kind of like, if you've heard of Groupon, they reward their users for participating in our ecosystem. And GrowFitter had some of the most transactions on the Supra blockchain. And a funny story, and I told this the other day on our X Space, but the co-founder of GrowFitter approached me at Permissionless in the US last year. And he said, we deployed our application on this network and that network, and we broke them. And I need, you know, hopefully Supra has a blockchain that if we deploy, that we're not going to break your chain. We need to find a scalable, good chain to grow on, and so because they have a huge amount of users and transactional volume. And I told them, well, Supra is the place for you, because I bet that if you deploy on Supra, you won't be able to break our chain. And he actually said, I bet we're going to break your chain, and hopefully we break your chain in order for you guys to improve. And I was like, I don't think that's going to happen. And so recently we had a call with the founder of GrowFitter, and he was like, you know what? We didn't break your chain, and everything has been super smooth. So that was a fun story. That was really great to see, you know, that we're really building a scalable blockchain that can handle high level of transaction and throughput. So GrowFitter is really interesting. They're also doing kind of incentivizing fitness, right?
Yeah.
So not like Step In, where you incentivize people to take steps, but
Yeah.
they incentivize people to be healthy. It was funny because on one of these X Spaces, I was talking about Brian Johnson and the Don't Die movement, and how like what's becoming popular is this movement towards improving biomarkers, like improving your health biomarkers to increase your longevity. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to be able to incentivize, right? We talked about incentivization, political economy, to incentivize people to be healthy. and specifically to incentivize improving biomarkers, right, for people to live longer and healthier lives and happier lives. And I found out from GrowthFitter that they heard me on the X Space, and they're like, "We got to do this. We got to implement this." And I think Brian Johnson and Don't Die are going to be creating their own app that does this as well. But it was great to see that we're all kind of thinking in the same zone, on the same wavelength, to incentivize something special. Like why, like, isn't it great going from like meaningless meme coins to actually using blockchain to incentivize good behavior and
Hmm.
healthiness? That's where we got to head. And that's where we're headed. And I think if we can focus on that 1% or 2% of what blockchain and Web3 will actually do for good, I think we can keep our energy, we can keep our motivation to keep going. Because really, in the end, it's all about the impact we make in the world. We're not going to live forever. Why not, make an impact in the world while we're here? So yeah, that was interesting. So that's Growth Fitter. It's kind of like this Groupon type thing that relates to incentivizing good health.
Cool. So people
And
have to
we have other
how
things.
does it work for user? Just curious. Like did they sign up and then I'm kind of curious about the user flow. Like how do they so they get rewards, right, for participating or something?
Yeah, so I think at the moment it's pretty simple. They stake Supra,
Hmm.
and they get rewarded and are able to buy different products at discounts. I
Okay.
think GrowthFitter is working with some Bollywood relations that they have in India to, to maybe kind of give cheaper tickets to attend this or that event. So it's kind of incentivizing people to participate in our ecosystem, to stake Supra. And yeah, we're excited about the different incentive models that they're bringing specifically for health. And I think that user flow is yet to come, but we're looking forward to see what they do.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah. I think you were about to say some other dApps that you want to share.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did you ever play video games growing up, or like
Oh
is
yeah, I
that
play a
something
lot of video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So you
said earlier, like
probably
in my
played
early days, yeah.
CS:GO.
CS:GO. Oh yeah, I think I play like maybe the older version of that, like Counter Strike.
Yeah, Counter Strike. Yeah. So Counter Strike, CS:GO have what they call skins, right? So you can buy
Yeah.
knives and you can buy different skins, certain
Weapons.
guns, and I think like skins are a very like when you think of Fortnite or you think of different games like Dota, skins are a big part of gaming, and it's not something that affects gameplay, right? It's like you can still play the game and be a skilled player, and the skins are not going to affect the skill part of the game. It's just aesthetics, right? It just looks cool, right? And you can kind of show that off. So skins are definitely something that I feel like you could take a skill based game and put those skins on blockchain and allow them to be tradable. And people do trade skins, but not really traditionally on blockchain rails. They're siloed into these different, either in the Steam store or in these like third party applications that are not as secure. But we have a company that's building on Supra called SkinFi, and they actually created a skin marketplace for CS:GO. So check them out. They're called SkinFi, and I think that's a really wonderful use case for blockchain and gaming, because blockchain gaming that is not about skill, like I don't know, Axie Infinity or games like that, and those were cool experiments, definitely. But games that really don't focus on skill are just less fun and less meaningful in my point of view. And so skill-based gaming is great. And what's one thing that you can apply Web3 to in gaming and skill-based gaming is to be able to buy and sell skins that you acquire. And you can personally own them, and you can buy and sell them and create a whole marketplace. So SkinFi is one company that we saw doing that, and we invested in them, and we knew what they were building about a year ago. So it's great to see them building on Supra.
Well, that's quite cool. Yeah. I'm curious, like how does that work? Is the game what platform do you play the game on? I mean, when I played Counter Strike, it was like a long time ago. So
Sure.
CS:GO is
So
yeah, and then
I think you could play on Steam.
okay,
Yeah,
and then
CS:GO.
so you
Yeah.
buy the skin on Steam and then put it like an NFT or something, and then sell it, or how's it work
Yeah,
on
so
SkinFi?
to be honest, the full like infrastructure back end of how that works, I should know it. I knew it a year ago, but I think I would
Okay.
kind of botch explaining it at the moment. But it is a separate marketplace, but it's connected to Steam. So there's a direct connection, and it's done in a way more safe way than other third party marketplaces that trade skins.
Okay. And then for user, it would be pretty easy, I suppose, or seamless,
Yeah.
because like I think one of the challenge for a lot of for Web 2 users that know nothing about Web 3, right, is like, how do I even go about buying things in Web 3? Like, what is a wallet? It's a very typical question. Like, what is crypto? Where do I get one? Right.
If
So
you asked me last year, John, what is going to onboard the next billion users, I would have said gaming. And my opinion has changed since then. But the reason why I thought that is that if you can build games where the users don't feel like they're interacting with blockchain, they just get skins, they get items, and they build up their inventory. But eventually they say, hey, if you want to trade these, you know, and you want to cash out, you got to go through blockchain rails. So people are incentivized to cash out. If they have 500 US dollars from their earnings in a game, eventually they're going to be incentivized to cash out into stablecoins. And that's where my opinion has changed. What's going to onboard the next billion users? It's going to be stablecoins, right? And like, so for example, at Supra, we're building because we have a blockchain with native automation and price feeds, we're building out almost like this Stripe competitor, like this ability to automate like subscription payments for different things. And so, yeah, we definitely feel like, yeah, the next billion users are going to do and be interacting with kind of stable coins in one way or the other. And so that's exciting. But yeah, I still think gaming is probably number two, which is something that people can play for, like you can, it's free to play, but you spend your time and energy for hours and hours a day. And we were back in high school, I played all day. I could play all day without caring. And imagine, someone plays all day playing CS:GO and they acquire these skins. Eventually, hey, I want to cash out, and that will be, so blockchain will kind of almost enforce or incentivize the action to, eventually get into stablecoins. So maybe they go in hand.
interesting. I think that stablecoin will only keep growing just because of the number of financial institutions, TradFi, right, and banks, and also many other want to issue their own like stablecoins. But I do see the point about payments. I think one of my I think some of my Web3 friends also told me one of their doubt. Feel free to answer this if you want to, but like how when it comes to Web3 payment, right? I think so. I think we both know that Web2 have like a lot of payment rails, right? And Web3 is like on a separate system, right? I mean, yeah, because on Web2 you have like Swift, for example, for the banking. So I think if user want to use Web3 for like payment, I think if it's let's say if it's same price, right? Then there's no reason for you to switch from Web2 payment to Web3 payment, right? Like if you pay $6 for I don't know for skin and $6 here, it's like there's no point, right? So I think usually it has to be something else, or like if you have no other choice, like for example, you can only cash out through crypto. So I'm kind of So I'm curious
So
if I'm
let's break it down a little bit, right? So what if, and this is probably the wrong assumption, but what if there's more, because people eventually, let's just say 3 years from now, people start using Web3 marketplaces for skins or for in-gaming items, right? And eventually they learn that I own these items forever. And not only that, but maybe this marketplace has more volume. There's more sales going on in this marketplace. And there's like arbitrage opportunities, there's opportunities to buy and sell and to kind of make a difference. And so you create this stronger, more liquid market for these in-gaming assets. And therefore there's more exchanging going on. Maybe in that case, it's easier, the time window from buying an asset or getting an asset by playing the game and selling it at a decent price decreases as you get more liquidity, right? So I think I made a big assumption there that these marketplaces will have more liquidity, more trading volume. That's probably not the case though, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, like, from the case that you mentioned, if the price is the same, right?
no
And
no
what would make the difference? Well, if there's more liquidity and more trading volume, That would make a difference, right? Now,
Mm.
if you apply this to stablecoin, let's apply this from stablecoin to credit card payments. Okay. So, not from the user perspective, but for the company that accepts credit card payments. If you use Visa or MasterCard and I'm charging you $20, use my software every month, I'm actually getting billed 50 cents every time a credit card payment is being made as the company because I'm
Yeah,
accepting your money. You don't see that as a consumer, but as a merchant, I'm getting charged by Visa 50 cents, right? So I think the merchant feels it, and therefore that cost is eventually given back to the user, right? So in blockchain rails, it would actually cost the merchant less, and therefore maybe it would affect the price of the end product. At least the merchant would be making more money or be incentivized to use the stable coin instead of the credit card.
I see. Yeah, yeah. I think in that case, I do see that as well. Like merchant would opt out because they can avoid the maybe 2 to 3% fees, right, from Visa and Mastercard. Yeah, that
Yep.
one I can see. And then,
And
but
one
I
last
think,
point to this. One last point. When you have big payments that are $1,000, let's just say this is a big software that you pay every month. Kaito is like 1,000. Kaito Pro is 1,000 US dollars a month.
wow,
It's a good
expensive.
platform, but it's very expensive, right? Imagine I'm paying for Kaito for $1,000 a month. I'm paying the merchant is paying 50 cents out of that. It's not a big portion, right? The ratio is quite small, like from 50 cents to 1,000. But what if we're talking about micro payments? What if I want to tip you on Twitch and I'm only tipping you $1 or $5? If I'm tipping you $1, but you're only as a merchant receiving 50 cents from that credit card payment, that's 50% of that micro transaction. So blockchain is really great for micro transactions because it gets rid of that 50-cent credit card.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, hopefully. But I think probably we still need to overcome somewhat either the what is it, network effect, right? Because I think we
Yes.
both know like Visa and Mastercard is like the
Yeah.
almost like monopolies or duopolies in the world when it comes to that. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it. But yeah, oh, interesting, cool. Anyway, I'm curious about the people behind your company. Can you share with us like how many people work at the Supra at the moment?
Right. So we have over 100 people. So we're a big startup, over 100 people in the company. We're worldwide. We currently don't have an office. Over 100 people, no office, because we started our
Quite
company
typical for web.
yeah, but we started during COVID. If we started the company before COVID or after COVID, we probably would have a totally different culture at Supra.
Mm,
But because we started during COVID, it was just a culture that we built that in general, it's all about merit and how well you do work, right? So people work remotely and their work is judged not by them coming to an office, not by being physically at a meeting and interacting, or the merit does not come by being my friend, right? But by how well people do. And so I think there is a benefit to the remote world. I think we were just dealt these cards because of COVID, but I actually kind of feel I kind of like it. Now, more recently, people like Elon Musk and other big companies have said, hey, actually, this is not working. This is less efficient. And so they wanted to, even the government as well, US government said, hey, everyone actually has to come back to the office. And I think that doesn't apply to every company. I think efficiency is different. If you're a Tesla, if you're a car company, yeah, I think you're going to want people to work in the office. You're working with, you work kind of hands on with physical products. I think that's different. But in a software company, I think remote work. The great part about remote work is one thing: it's autonomy.
yeah.
Autonomy is something, when you give people autonomy, it opens up creativity in many people. And so the people that work at Supra have this autonomy by having to live anywhere in the world. When we have Zoom calls or calls, no one
Yeah.
has their video on. There's not
Mm,
expected in our company. I mean, 95% of our company, I think it's 90% now, but at one point, 95% of our company were introverts. So like, it's all really about creativity. It's about the ideas that we have, and it's about actually how well we implement those ideas, and not about, right, showing my face in this video call or being in person at this meeting or that meeting. And yeah, so I think we built somewhat of a unique culture that promotes creativity through autonomy in this remote world that started through COVID up until now.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Would you say what are some of the challenges facing your team? I mean, being a fully remote and no
Well,
office.
the challenges of being in different time zones, right? What's really difficult is having US, Europe, and Asia. And if you have a call with all three time zones, it's really bad. It's either my, like, I don't know, 7 a.m. or like my 9 p.m. It can be pretty bad time zones when you mix the three. And I would say that that's a difficulty because I don't mind waking up early, but
Mm.
but late night calls are pretty bad for sleep schedule. And I do have a focus on being healthy and
Yeah.
longevity, and having a really regimented good sleep schedule is important. So that I guess that's one challenge is the different time zones.
Any technical challenge that you guys facing?
We have one of the best research teams in the world. Our team, our chief research officer, his name is Dr. Aniket Kate. He's a professor. He was a professor at Purdue University, and he
Mm.
joined Supra. We've been working with him for years, almost like 3.5, 4 years, and he's been full time at Supra for I think 2.5 years. And he's just a powerhouse. He's famous in the cryptography distributed system world. So he was able to attract amazing talent to Supra. And so we're so grateful to have him on the team. The story of how we, built that relationship, there was a you know, long build up. First, Dr. Kate, Josh, my co-founder, reached out to him
Yeah.
and basically asking about a paper that he wrote called DKG in the wild, distributed key generation in the wild. And Josh just kind of like picked his brain and had a few phone calls and eventually just asked, hey, is this, or what we building at Supra, is it interesting enough for him to kind of want to advise us? And he said, yeah. And he eventually joined the team full time, took a sabbatical from Purdue and
Yeah.
joined Supra full time. So I'd say that technical difficulties arise from poor research. If you don't do research first and you don't have a research driven team and you just dive into tech, you're gonna fail most likely, but you're gonna have a lot of technical difficulties because you're basically steering a ship, without seeing where you're going, without a compass and or a North Star. So the research team, Supra is a research first or research driven team. And that is really what helps our technical team, our engineers, to be able to easily implement what the researchers have outlined and have outlined in a very detailed way. So it's much more easier to implement because we're a research driven team.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. I think in Web3 is like basically like a frontier industry, right? There's always like new things to be discovered. So it's super important for any teams to have like a very strong research team
It
to
is because,
discover. Yeah.
like, why are we here? Why are we creating a new blockchain? Right? Why would anyone create a copy paste L2 or a new blockchain that's not innovative? I feel like it's almost hurtful for some of these blockchains to just copy the code and just relaunch a chain just for the sake of, oh, we're going to be faster or more scalable in some very small manner. Yeah, it's a little bit sad to see a lot of teams doing that. I feel like it's kind of a money grab in many ways. But if you're going to build a blockchain, that's going to compete against Solana, which is already super fast and a great chain itself. If you're going to compete against Ethereum, which Ethereum does need to do more at scaling the L1, you need to have innovation, right? You need to come up with something that's better. And in order to do that, you have to have the best researchers, behind you and what you're building. Or else, like, I wouldn't have the energy to be here, and to keep going for the last almost 7 years if we were building vaporware, if we weren't building something innovative. So yeah, so I'm proud of that. I find myself super lucky to have met and found my co-founder Josh, and the fact that Josh was able to attract Dr. Annika Kate and all the other amazing researchers and engineers on our team. It's really, really quite a blessing.
Cool. Yeah. One more area here, and then just a couple more questions. I'll close the show. I'm really curious about, like, for, I think, well, we were talking about tokenomics earlier, right? So I was just curious, like, what do you think about, like, business model of Supra, like business model of a blockchain, right? Like, how are you planning to make it sustainable some way? Just curious.
Interesting point, right? If you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley, there's a funny part in Silicon Valley where um, one of the characters will say, "Hey, don't talk about revenue, right? Always be pre-revenue." So a lot of L1s, right? A lot of blockchains, just in general, they don't really have revenue models, right? A lot of times it's really just about you got emissions, and all of a sudden the token is the product, right? But at Supra, we're looking at different revenue model systems to make Supra and our foundation more sustainable in the long run. For example, when you have a layer one with native oracles, native automation, you can do some interesting things at the layer one level. Like, for example, we can use automation every block to auto liquidate um, things on this perpetual protocol, for example, to auto liquidate positions and distribute that to the node operators, to distribute that fairly to the application itself, to that dApp, but also to the foundation, to the L1 itself. So we're going to use automation as a way to generate revenue by automating liquidations at the end of every block. So that's interesting. That's one thing. Another area where automation comes into play is that we can automate every block. We can also automate arbitrage on our DeFi. So if there's like a level, like if there's like an imbalance, a slight imbalance of token value in our DeFi ecosystems, we can actually automate arbitrage at the end of every block as well to kind of like help balance the ecosystem. And that's another kind of like revenue model that Supra can take advantage of and be self-sustaining. So I talked about auto liquidations, auto arbitrage, but also we talked earlier about Supra Nova, our bridgeless bridge. Cross-chain communication is also another area of revenue that we can make if we facilitate these cross-chain cross-chain transactions. There's also revenue to be made there. And the last thing is just like general automated tasks. This as a service can generate 10 cents per automation, for example, and that happens enough times that can actually generate quite a bit over a month, for example. So yeah, these are some of the revenue models that are going to be built into the layer one itself. And this is only possible on an ecosystem that vertically integrates the layer one with price feeds, with Oracle price feeds, with automation and bridging and randomness, etc.
Interesting. Yeah. Sounds cool. Just curious. It's like a random forecast question here, but so there will be like a point in time where it will be, I guess, like revenue outflow costs, right, to run blockchain at some point.
That's right. But at
Yeah.
some point, I'm hoping, so automation's live on testnet in a couple months, right? We'll also have EVM testnet. I imagine it's going to take a month after, maybe 2 months after that, to have the automation tasks more efficient. And then we're launching something called proof of efficient liquidity, which is going to be our incentive program to attract more TVL. So we're going to be attracting like 20, 30 million in TVL and stablecoins to really help boost up our DeFi ecosystem. So I imagine in the next, I think conservatively, in the next 8 months, we'll probably be at the point where we have actually enough revenue to be for the network to actually start producing profit, which is actually quite, I think it's quite fast. But imagine a blockchain, a layer one that can be self-sufficient in itself and be in like this automated kind of engine that can be able to generate profit and kind of exist on its own in an efficient manner. I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah, if that probably come, I'm pretty sure that'd be very exciting as well. So then it could keep running on its own, right?
Yeah,
Well,
I could.
ideally.
We like Josh and I could pass away in 10 years, and all of a sudden, this network, as AI advances, it could have more smart automation, to exist into perpetuity. That
Mm.
that would be a beautiful end goal for where Supra is headed.
Cool, cool. Yeah. And then looking forward in the future here, like how will well, as Web3 evolve in the future, right? What role do you think Supra will play in that Web3 world?
So if you ask my co-founder Josh he's always had more aspirations than me, and I tend to follow his aspiration. But Josh would say that our goal is to be, top 3, top 4 ecosystem blockchain that has, the most transactional volume and the most throughput of any other ecosystem. So we're talking about general purpose blockchain, right? That's the end goal, is to be the best. But in the short term, what we're focused on is something called execution quality and DeFi. So we want to have fast, efficient transactions with native oracles to be able to facilitate better DeFi and with better execution quality. And we feel like if we can have the best execution quality in DeFi, Web3 and blockchain is all about transfer of value, right? If you can be the best and give the best execution quality in DeFi, you can be the best all-purpose chain. So that's really the end goal, but there's a step-by-step process for us to get there.
Makes sense. Yeah. Up to one step first to get to the long-term goal. Cool. Yeah. Two more final question here. And then do you have any advice for people who want to build their own Web3 company or startup?
Well, it depends on your background and your skill set. So really focus on like what you have in front of you. Like I talked a little bit earlier about how I started, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a community. I didn't have entrepreneurs around me here in Taipei. So I created Taiwan Entrepreneur Club. And through that, I met, people that were interested in crypto and Web3. And so I kind of slowly like built a community or a focus, right? I found out what my focus would be. And so I suggest everyone, for one, if I was to give any advice, is not to listen to people's advice because everyone's different, right? But I would just say, really find your focus and put all your energy into that, and give something a full try. Don't focus on 1,000 things. Find a niche and focus in, and really put all your effort in. There's a saying that I used to tell that I told Josh in the past. Like, I remember in 2018, we got to the point where I didn't have any more money to help sustain us. So Josh also,
Mm.
we both ran out of money. We don't have investor money.
This was
And
2018 or something?
say again?
What year was this?
This is 2018.
18. Okay.
Right. So we started, we met each other. Sorry, this is, yes, 2018. So we met each other and we started to work in January 2018. We started our crypto lab in June of 2018.
Mm.
Okay. So we kind of ran out of money towards the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And I remember talking about how like I already burned all my boats, right? Like the boats that I sailed here, to whatever we did to get here, I burned all my boats, and there's no going back for me, right? So I
Yeah.
have to move forward. And so I guess an advice to that kind of like, to people is like to fully focus on one thing and do it in a way where you don't have any way to go back. You just have to go forward. And I think that could be an interesting piece of advice for people.
Cool. Yeah. I believe the term for that is like zero optionality.
Yeah,
There's also a term for that in like the
that's right.
entrepreneurship world. Yeah. Where you really have to like, just go with the all in, right?
Yeah, there's no
Kind of like
way, there's no
gamble.
other
Yeah. All
option
in.
to retreat, because when
Yeah.
you have an option to retreat, I think you're using, 10, 20% of your brain is feeling like I have a way out. So you're not actually giving your full, right?
Mm.
So it's good to kind of actually get to the point where you have to go forward. You have no other option, like you mentioned, zero optionality. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great part. Cool. And final question: where can people follow you and your company? Feel free to share any public handles and
Sure. Yeah. So
you
definitely
want.
follow us on Twitter, on Supra Labs. You can go to supra.com to see our website. If you want to follow me personally, you can look at Jon Evans Jones. That's JONEVANS on Twitter. But yeah, follow Supra, see what we're doing. We have some very interesting things coming up. So definitely follow us and get the updates.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes here so that people can follow you and your company. Once again, John, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks for sharing us about the latest development at Supra, and I wish you and your company all the best.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're back to my studio. I think Supra has a stellar research team that keep coming up with new innovations. It'll be very interesting to see what sort of dApps will be built on Supra in the future. If you have built on or used dApp on Supra before, please leave a comment below. Tell us your experience. If you've been a long-term fan of my podcast and you know that we have covered many different blockchains except for Bitcoin, for the next episode, we'll be talking to Sebastian Paqueta, FX at rootstock.io. Rootstock is the first and longest running Bitcoin sidechain, fully compatible with the Ethereum virtual machine or EVM. In short, Rootstock is Bitcoin's DeFi layer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you for watching and see you next time.